Hi there, everybody, and welcome to my channel. My name is Luki Gomez, and I am doing a whole set of videos talking about the Billboard Year in Hot 100 singles for 1970. And that's what I've been doing. Now, this time, it's taking me a couple of weeks to get it together because, boy, it's been a busy 2 weeks. So, the last one we did was The Long and Winding Road by the Beatles. It's number 41 on this Billboard list. And so I was like, okay, so we've done that one. And now what do I want to do? And I'm thinking that probably I would like to do, well, I decided to do, okay, not very much far down from there, number 43 by the Marmalade. The names that they had in those days, the name of the band is Marmalade. And they did this incredible song called Reflections of My Life. And this song is really, let me just say, the harmonies are amazing. They kind of sound like the Bee Gees, except cooler, even though the Bee Gees were pretty cool. This particular song, Reflections of My Life, has really powerful lyrics that I felt worth noting, aside from the fact that the music is really beautiful. The harmonies are beautiful. And the song is arranged in a way that it reflects the era of the end of the 60s into 1970s. So it kind of has like a kind of a hippie vibe, these guys that are in this band. And their video, which I will be linking, has them singing the song, and they're very hippie looking, very early into the 70s kind of vibe. So that's really incredible about this song. It's that reflects that transitional period from the 60s into the 70s, but there is that 60s vibration that still seems to linger into the 70s, especially into the early 70s, in my opinion. So, Reflections of My Life by Marmalade was released in 1969 and in 1970. Okay, so it was released twice. So this particular single comes from their album, also called Reflections of the Marmalade. That's what it's called, the album, Reflections of the Marmalade. The song is called Reflections of My Life. And they were a Scottish band, Scottish band, and they were released by Decca Record Studio 2 in West Hampstead, London. Okay, and Reflections of My Life is in side one of that time, along with a song that was called Rolling My Thing. That's what it's called, on side 2 of this 45 record. And it was released in November of 1969 in the UK, all right? And then later in the United States, it's released in March of 1970. That's why they have those two release dates. The first release was in the UK, and then the second release was here in the States 69, 70, the end of 69 and then the beginning of 1970, those 2 dates. Now, the song isn't very long. It's like 4 minutes and 16 seconds long. And it's pop rock genre of that period. And it's written by a guy named Junior Campbell and Dean Ford. Okay. The production of this music, excuse me. Not the production, the producers of this music were the whole band as a group. All of the members, they produced this record. And boy, was it quite a piece. Really amazing. So, between 1969 and 1970, the band featured a classic lineup of 5 guys, in the band, including these 5 guys in the production process too. So, reflections of my life. Boy, what are some of the main themes of this song? I kind of made some notes here. Reflections of my life, reflections of my mind, kind of like looking back on the past and the feelings of the past and how they reflect a sense of nostalgia, a longing of wishing that there was a way of going back, kind of a feeling a bit discontent with the present situation, the present moment, the present world. And there's this deep longing for being in that past that maybe was so comforting. Okay, that's one of the themes. There's also the idea that the song speaks of the emotional and personal changes that come from having a difficult life, experiences which at some point lead to a strong desire for home and all of that stuff that's familiar, family, friends from the past, the way it was in the past, being at home. You know, going back into the past and thinking of what it was like when we were living with our parents, for example, you know, and it's like it was pretty easy living. We didn't have to work. We went to school and that was stressful, but there's a time of life when it's we feel safe and protected, usually, hopefully, right? So it's kind of like that could be another theme. And then the theme of sorrow and despair, nostalgia and longing, discontent with the world of the present and the changes that have occurred, reflections of time. You know, at that point in time in 1970, we were still in the Vietnam War. The draft was still on full blast. So it was definitely a strange vibe in the ambience and the environment going on there. The 1970s, you know, like the Vietnam War, like I was saying, coming out of the happy-go-lucky, you know, flower power, children, hippie movement, and being confronted with reality, which Woodstock might have played a big part in that, in my opinion, because Woodstock had so much potential to offer to that generation, being free, peace, love, understanding, going to this 3-day concert, like a 3-day Burning Man event, you know. But there's so many people that showed up that it completely, it affected the experience. And it became a really, and then it was raining, the weather didn't help, made things very difficult. So in spite of all of the excitement, emotional excitement that went into that event, being such an important event, kind of like the culminating, flowering cultural event of this movement, and yet it's rained upon, and it's just really hard to be there. Not only for the people who are there to participate in Woodstock and listen to the music, but also to the people who were performing. So it was pretty crazy. So here we're coming out of that, and then we have the Vietnam War, and so there's a lot of anti-war sentiment, which was already existing, but the fact that the anti-war movement has been trying really hard to stop the war, here we are entering the 70s and it's still going. It's a complete devastating defeat, feeling defeat kind of situation for young people, in the fact that the war was still happening. That was the reality. And also having to participate in it even though you didn't want to or believed in it, you know. And there's this whole longing to return, to go back to that time when we weren't fighting in some war, which is kind of hard to find, but there was a few years there where we weren't in any wars. And the thing is that that's a really, in my opinion, a really big theme. It's really hard to expect our young men to go and fight a war that they're completely against, that they don't believe in. Very different from World War II, as I've discussed this before. World War II made sense to that generation, and they were willing to go and fight the war, and everybody was into winning that war and really believing in what they were doing. But it's so different by the time of the late 60s and 70s. Those sentiments are gone. So these guys that are in this band, they write this song. So first we have Dean Ford, and he provides lead vocals and also plays the guitar and the harmonica. And then we have William Jr. Campbell, who plays keyboard and guitar, in addition to contributing to vocals. There goes some of the harmonies that you hear there. And then we have Patrick Fairley, and he plays the string bass and rhythm guitar and provides vocals. So all of these guys have good voices and can sing. And then we have Graham Knight, who plays bass and provides vocals, and Alan Whitehead, who is the band's drummer and is probably providing vocals too, even though it doesn't say here. Maybe he's not. Kind of like Ringo Starr. So this band was particularly successful during this period with hits like Ola Di, Ola Da, which is topping the UK chart in early 1969, and then Reflections of My Life becoming a major international hit in late 1969 and early 1970. The classic lineup of these five guys remain together until 1971, when the lineup begins to change, where the members of the band, start to change. It happens a lot with bands. Um, the orchestral part of Marmalade's recording of Reflections of My Life was created by adding brass and string sections, which were arranged by Keith Mansfield. This was done in the studio in October of 1969 during the 3-day recording session. So this orchestral takes that they incorporate into this song is really interesting to check it out and listen to, being aware of that's there. It's part of like what makes this song feel so full, so rich, and in addition of the orchestration and artistic freedom that was allowed to these by to the band members by the studio, which was Decca. They had all this freedom to create and elaborate arrangements and that kind of thing, which is really nice. We're very lucky to have for them to have had that, because we have this song we can listen to. Now, beyond the orchestral backing, the song is also known for its distinctive and what they call complex reversed tape guitar solo performed by Junior Campbell. Now, this is a technique that they were using in the 60s. The Beatles used it, and it was a big deal. It was called complex reversed tape guitar solo. And this distinctive and complex reverse tape guitar solo began to be used in popular music in the mid-1960s. And it's a product of psychedelic rock and advancements in tape recording. So the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix were the pioneers of the complex solo, with George Harrison and Jimi Hendrix recording soundtracks in 1966 and in 1967, respectively. They were doing it then. So with the Beatles, for example, you have I'm Only Sleeping, which came out in June 1966 from their album Revolver, which is one of my favorite albums. And this song, I'm Only Sleeping, is incredible, and it's got some really cool guitar wowie giddy sounds going in and out. I don't know how to describe them, but it's part of this method, of this technique that they're using. And George Harrison composed and recorded a guitar solo for this song that was then played backwards. This was apparently it was really hard to do, very involved. You had to be very patient. And the solo in eventually in reverse. The solo is in reverse, recorded in reverse, and it creates this psychedelic dream-like effect. Something like that. I mean, I don't do it justice, but kind of like not science fiction-y at all. Okay, so there is also this song Tomorrow Never Knows, 1966, also released in the same album, which is Revolver. This track also features a reverse guitar parts and other tape manipulations. Okay, so this is also Tomorrow Never Knows. It's a great piece also, and they're both in Revolver, and I'm putting those in the playlist, these two songs. Now, Paul McCartney and the production staff created multiple tape loops, apparently, of instruments and vocals for the song. So hence the effects that you hear sometimes with some of their music, and these two songs in particular. The discovery of the effect is often contributed to John Lennon accidentally running a tape backward while under the influence of marijuana and liking how it sounded, you know. And so through that experimentation, you know, he was like, okay, we got something here, that we got this new sound we can use. And then Jimi Hendrix with the hit Are You Experienced 1967 also uses this method. Let's see, what else can I say about this? I mean, I'm saying a lot because there's so much information about this song. I have a bunch of notes on it, you know, but I'm feeling like let's see, they're talking about, let's see, my notes here say Castle Made of Sand, 1967, on the track from Axis, Bold as Love. Hendrix, okay, we're talking about Hendrix, who used the technique. So Hendrix uses it on another piece called Castles Made of Sand, 1967, if you want to check that out and listen to it, which I think I'm including it on the playlist too. A lot of really good music. I mean, it's an opportunity to not also experience reflections of my life, but just all the other stuff that influenced them in their music. They say that this stuff influenced them, you know, so that's kind of cool. So now, anyway, Reflections of My Life became a huge hit, It reached number 3 in both the UK and in the US chart in 1969. And from the beginning, the sales of this release song were pretty significant, reaching 1 million in November of 1971. A year later, 1 million sold. That's a huge deal for that period. It was then that the group was presented with the gold disc for golden sales. So the gold disc is a system of certifying that a music recording has shipped, sold, and streamed a certain number of times. And these numbers and quantities vary by type, such as album, single, music, video, etc. So, en fin. So, with all that in mind and everything else that's been going on about what I've just said, and there's so much music that's relatable, that influenced them, that it's great music that I love, so that I've included. So let's move into the lyrics. So, Reflections of My Life, it begins with the changing of sunlight to moonlight, reflections of my life. Oh, how they fill my eyes. You know, a reflection is the bouncing off of light, right? And the reflections of the light, those bouncing off moments of light, because you got to have the sunlight and you have to have the moonlight. You have to have light. And these reflections of my life, you know, the singer is saying, or the writer of the song, they fill my eyes. And then the next part says, the greetings of people in trouble, reflections of my life, how they fill my eyes. So the panoramic natural views of sunrise, sunset, the sunlight during the day, the moonlight at night fill the eyes. And then the greetings of people saying hi, people being in trouble, just everything that comes with having relationships, they fill my eyes too. And then it says, all my sorrow, sad tomorrows, take me back to my old home. So all my sorrow, sad tomorrows, yeah, you're living in a time when there's a lot to be sad about in society of that period when we're living. I'm not saying that it was bad all the time, but it was really hard, and having a war and having the draft was very difficult. And the coming back from war was really it was crazy. I mean, you just weren't the same coming back from that war. You were in a different reality. Things were different. So take me back to my old home makes a lot of sense. All my crying, feel I'm dying, take me back to my old home. And then here you have those guitar licks that are so influenced by Harrison and Hendrix. And then the next part is, I'm changing, arranging, I'm changing everything around me. So it's almost like, in spite of this helplessness and this sadness, there's like this desire to change, to change for the better, and not just, it's changing everything, everything that you do, everything that you're reading, everything you're changing, everything that's around me, he says. And then the next part says, the world is a mad place, a sad place, a bad place, a terrible place to live, but I don't want to die. In spite of the suffering, the horrors, the evil, the bad things that happen, you still want to live, right? I mean, that's what he's saying. He doesn't want to die. He still wants to live. It wasn't like that for a lot of people, but that's the gist. We want to make things better, change things for a betterment of everything, so that we can live in peace, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. And then it says, all my sorrow, sad tomorrows, take me back to my old home. All my crying, feel I'm dying, take me back to my old home. The world is a mad place, a bad place, a terrible place to live. But I don't want to die. I don't want to die. So those are all the lyrics. And you guys, things aren't that different today. It's the human condition. It's always been that whole desire of humans, of all of us, to each period that we end up living in, the epochs that we end up living in. They come with baggage, they come with good, they come with bad, like the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it's all there, and it's part of life, and it hurts, and it's sad, but there's also the hope of a new sunrise, a new day, a new full moon that will light the path at night. There still is the promise of beauty, because spring will come and flowers will be born again, and they will be beautiful. And then in the fall they will die. It's like the cycles of life. When I think of this song and some of the themes, I can't help but think of stuff like that. And then also, another thing that I find that is just beautiful is how the musicians of that period, the pop musicians of that period, were so innovative in what they were doing. If you listen to the music that came out of that period, and I'm talking about 60s into the 70s, and compare to the music that was happening in the 50s, you're going to notice a huge cosmic conscience change. And if you go further back and listen to music from the 40s and the 30s, it's a whole different type of music in terms of like the vibe, the lyrics. They're singing about other things. And even though in the 30s and 20s they were going through that Great Depression, and it doesn't have, in my opinion, the depth of feeling and manifestation in terms of musicality and the experimentation of what was done and the depth of feelings that were involved that we see with this music of the late 60s and 70s. And that's why I'm so into it. because there's just so much spunk, there's just so much feel, there's so much intensity, it's so colorful, it's so different from one song to another, but music is that way anyway. But yeah, there's like, it didn't matter if you were a trained musician or not. It was okay to just go out and play your guitar like Melanie did, I mean, just, it was okay. You were artistic and it was amazing. And it was pop music. It's pop music. Except that in the 60s and 70s, it's rock and roll, which is a whole vibe of like, I don't know, like I think of it in terms of like, not only experimenting new ways of thinking and being, but sticking it to the big guy, that kind of thing. Rebelling, even though there was a lot of that. There's always been rebelling in American culture, movies. You can see it from the 50s, etc. But anyway, you guys, I hope you really enjoy this video and that you really enjoy the music, especially because it's all about the music and it's all about what it is that they're trying to say. Sometimes it doesn't really matter what they're saying. I want to hold your hand, I want to hold your hand. Very light, But then you have music like this, it's very invocative. I don't want to say provocative, I want to say invocative. It invokes, it brings you in. Okay, I think that's the word. Anyway, you guys, thank you for visiting. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week. Peace and love and understanding always. Chaucito. That's little goodbye.